Here's a ridiculous way as a copywriter to get more organized and to accomplish more in your writing. Hi, I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips. Now, this is a way that I clean up my physical space. If you've ever seen the background of one of my videos, you're going to see bookshelves and racks and piles of papers and other materials that are literally everywhere. And if you look closely over time at the videos, they're different piles. And so I want to share with you a strategy that helps me organize information and ultimately write large information products or intellectual property resources. Much of my business analyst work is actually writing reports for my clients. How do I do this easily without a lot of frustration and handle the volume of materials that are required to do this type of work? If I haven't said it already, I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips. Okay, so here's what we do. I take the physical room layout. I draw in my mind a grid. So I'm in my office right now, standing up, looking around. I imagine it in quarters. Okay, now in quarters, I have one quarter that has a desk and a bookshelf. I start from the outside wall and I work my way back, going through each item and organizing it in a software product called Paper Tiger. But you don't need Paper Tiger. You can use different types of indexing tools, or you can use a file system that basically has each item in its place. So my bookshelves have a place. My desk has drawers. Each of those drawers is a place for certain things. Now, the papers and materials that are on top of here, a lot of my work in progress, my tickler files and stuff like that, each item in those folders is then associated with an existing item. So let me share why this is important. I'll grab something off my desk. I've got these black binders. They're engineering notebooks. I will, in these binders, write on each page the daily activities. It's my work journal. In the front of this binder, it has a table of contents. Each page has a number on it. Each binder has an index. So each binder has a code that says, like, this is JCO-P-004. I got the index pages in here, numbers 1 through 100 and something. Essentially, that's what I'm doing to my physical space. Every item in the physical space is a number in a book. There's a location, and each location has a number of slots, and each item is in a slot. Now, Paper Tiger makes it really easy to do that. I'll include a link in the show notes. But ultimately, what we're doing here is we're associating items with topics, themes, and keywords. This starts clustering information. Now, there was a specific fancy word for this that I don't have off the top of my head, but ultimately what we're doing is we're clustering up like information to create small piles. It's similar to what you might do in research. You might create an outline, and then as you do research, you're going to associate things to a place on the outline, and then as you get a certain pile together, maybe you have a topic which is quotes to use. You got a big pile of quotes. What would the topic of those quotes be? Well, you're writing a report about how to be more organized. So you would choose quotes related to organizational topics, put them all in one place. Now, if you write another piece of material on organization, you have a place to go to get quotes because they're all together. You could scan these, put them in the computer. I use also DevonThink. So I was doing research earlier on something called about preventing burnout. And so I essentially searched all of 10 terabytes of data across my computer and my local systems of documents that were scanned in and OCR to optimal character reading in order to determine the text. And if it had the word prevent burnout, it came right back. Same thing can happen if you're looking at how to organize yourself. Again, take a larger room, divide it into parts, focus on one part at a time. The items in that part get put into a location. Each location has a number of slots. The item is then put into a slot. You need a way of knowing. Now, some people have done this on index cards, but you need to know where existing things are because you might find something on a desk that needs to be in a file cabinet, and there's already a file in there on the same topic. Put them together. It's kind of similar to putting all of a client's materials together in a client folder. However, if the client has projects, then we have a subfolder off the client folder that is their individual project. So all information related to that project goes into the project folder. That project folder then goes into the client folder, or in the case where you have, again, numbered slots, you might put them together by keyword, which could be your customer number, and then put them in the next available slot. Now, this can be a complex topic, but it essentially is the same as getting a big file box and throwing all the research on a certain topic in that same box. And then when you need to extract the information, you can go to that particular box. See, organization is not about the organizing. It is about the retrieval of the information, because it does you no good to file away a bunch of junk that you can't access. Now, I will admit that I can produce more materials than I can file or use. So I've got a stack of books over here. I'll read the titles off real quick. Tested Advertising Methods. That's a John Caples book. I have Selling Machine. That's somebody. Political and Economic Doctrines of John Marshall. I do a lot of writing about strategic thinking and in strategic relationships. How to Make It Big as a Consultant. The Miracle Success System. See, these are books. Those books organized into a system. I can keyword search. It'll tell me exactly where to find that book. I got a box over here that has about being direct. The Lester Walderman book. The Art of the Con. A book about how people think. Storytelling Made Easy. Many of these books I've read. I have an idea that they're somewhere in my office. I can either go to a bookshelf and find them. However, they're each in the right order according to the database that tracks everything. I can then just look in the database and it'll tell me where to go. I've got books on mail order. I've got books on finder's fees. I've got books and reports and materials, more than I could ever look at, but I'm only retrieving what I need for a specific project. Now, when you have a lot of loose papers, which happens because you get an idea, you write it down. What do you do with the loose papers? Same thing, except the loose papers start to go from a folder to a binder to a whole product. So I've got binders over here about assessments and personal profiling, about how to manage a project portfolio, about selling combs to monks. That's a story about how to sell things when there's a perception that the other person doesn't need it. Instant thank you notes for salespeople, which is an old product I put together for salespeople and gave them tools and resources to write thank you notes. Now, originally, that was just photocopies of the thank you notes I've written in the past, and then I extracted out of that a template for that I was commonly using for different types of thank you notes. And then I read a program by Tom Hopkins and listened to an audio tape by Tom Hopkins that talked about some formulas for thank you notes, and then I took notes on that, and I put those notes together, and next thing you know, I've got a stack of materials, and I said, well, you know what? Other people might be interested in this, and then I opened up a second line, which is the intellectual property or information product opportunity, and I sold some reports about how to write thank you notes. Now, that was years of research, practical use, implementation, ideas and concepts, feedback, other books I read that gathered itself together through a means of organization that ultimately produced a product that I basically sent out some lead generation to see if people were interested in. They were interested. I made an offer and it was sold. See, if you're a copywriter, marketer, or business development professional, you're in a perfect position to be organized so that when your client asks for the same thing twice, you can reference old materials and help them from a starting point rather than from scratch. And number two is if you have another client ask for similar materials. Let's say you've been writing for a client that serves affluent customers. You've been writing for them for years and they've got product X. Well, somebody comes along with product Y that they sell to the same affluent customers. You don't have to start from scratch. You'll have a system in place that has been organizing, cataloging, and compiling and building up resources that one day you can simply pull off the shelf and say, you know what, I wonder if anybody would be interested in how to track their copy response. See, I've been tracking my copy response for years. I gathered materials together and I said, okay, well, course AP3, I did a couple consultations, help people improve their tracking of direct response copy. Here are the 5 tips that worked well for that. Let's try it as an article. See, you can come up with an unlimited amount of topics. You can come up with an unlimited number of ideas. And now when you realize that copy and content, that content creation part is easy, you can start focusing on, well, What's the hard part? Let's solve for the hard part. And that's generating leads and producing sales. So again, you're compiling materials into a place where you can easily retrieve them, and you're retrieving them as well as storing them based on keywords and concepts. You're able to search those keywords and concepts, be able to draw the material forth when you need them, and then ultimately you can solve problems. You can solve problems. That's what it's about. It's not about having a nice, neat office. It's not about having the right books on your bookshelf. It's not about having the right writing materials. Oh my gosh, I see people when they talk about organization and they got the colored notebooks and the colored pens. They're just filing stuff. They're a glorified administrative assistant. I have a system in place that it doesn't matter who filed the stuff. I can retrieve it quickly and easily, and I can extract the information that I need. As I'm extracting the information, I'm building additional context in my tracking system. I am also creating lead generation, sales letters, deliverables for my clients, and ultimately providing a better value as a consultant or an advisor to those I work with. Does this make sense to you? Could you be rewriting old materials to get that second run for a customer? Hey, Mr. Prospect, last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we did this sales letter. And you know what? I have some new ideas and concepts I'd like to explore with you because I believe we can approach it in a different way and get your sales back to where you want them to be. You know, you wrote an article 5 years ago that was real popular and it worked well to get you clients, and it was about SARS or swine flu. And now COVID's come along. And if you just knew where that letter was, you could just rewrite the letter and change it from swine flu to COVID and test it again. And instead of starting from scratch and taking hours to write something and just throwing around ideas and being frustrated because you couldn't find the stuff you already did, you could be done and working on the real hard work of cultivating that customer, getting them to the next level. You may have built a library up of a certain audience. Wouldn't it be nice if you were organized in such a way that you could package that library because you're getting out of the business, you're retired, you know, you're tired of getting on the phone all the time or traveling, and you want to be able to create some passive income with an information resource that essentially compiles your experiences into a tool that you use to train your own staff so that if you have an agency model, they can replace you, or you sell as an information product so you can get that next generation up and going. Folks, it's an easy and simple system. Now, there are some nuances to an organization system like this because, again, we don't have visuals. I'm not showing you how this works. And the tools that I use, while they're extremely simple, they're multi-user, you do got to put the data in there in a reasonable way. If you have questions about those elements or anything that I wasn't able to cover in this podcast, please visit me at www.adbriefings.co.uk. The biggest thing about my podcasts and my materials online is that I'm really working every day, but I would feel bad if there was an unanswered question that you had, that if you had the answer to, could have made a tremendous difference in your ability to cultivate more clients for your copywriting, marketing, or business development services, or might have saved you a few hours that you could have reinvested those hours in spending time with your family or doing something more productive in your business other than searching. Now, I know the internet has taught us to search, but again, in my office alone, I've got more actual information, a concentration of actual information than the entire internet. I've got rare books in here. I've got How to Get Rich in Mail Order by Melvin Powers. I've got Stay Alive All Your Life by Norman Vincent Peale. I've got several copies of Dan Kennedy's Unlimited Sales Letter. But the key point is, I can retrieve those materials quickly. I can get right on the assignment. I can get the job done and turn it around with a higher level of quality, with a greater level of value, and ultimately have more time to do the things that I really enjoy. I want to thank you for listening. I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefings Copywriting Tips. If you have questions about this or anything we cover, please visit me online at www.adbriefings.co.uk. You can visit me there and visit the contact page where you can fax, write, or otherwise It might even let you send an email. I don't know. But ultimately, how are you organized? Are you organized in an administrative way that seems to be taking forever and your office is never cleaned up and you can't find anything? Or have you a system in place that not only archives materials but makes them ready to retrieve, and not only ready to retrieve but builds knowledge, builds resources, and ultimately builds your value in the marketplace as a copywriter, business development professional, or marketer? Thanks for listening. Until next time, I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips.